Hey there, it's Samantha Moe here, certified parent coach and founder of the Mad to Glad Blueprint. Now, if you know me, you know that I am on a mission to stop the fighting and yelling and frustration that happens at home with your strong-willed kids. And my Mad to Glad Blueprint is all about what's going on in the brain and the stress response. And when kids are melting down, I call that brain on fire. And what we like to do is I like to give you strategies and ways that you can put out the fire so that your child can be calmer inside, develop better self-soothing strategies, and help you to get along better at home. Now, today for the guest interview, what I wanted to do was bring in Betsy Barney, who's a certified gentle sleep coach, and she works with parents of kids up to the age of 6. And she has an advanced certification to work with kids as young as 4 to 5 months. And what she does is she works with families to help them set age-appropriate goals and provide education and motivation and accountability and guidance to parents so they can execute a sleep coaching program. So, Betsy, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Absolutely. So Betsy's in the mountains of Colorado, and so you might notice that the quality of our screen and color looks a little bit different. And so I'm so pleased that you're here, even though the wireless connection might be a little bit spotty.
I know, sorry about that.
No problem. So Betsy, tell us what you do and what your story is.
Okay, well, like you said, I'm a certified gentle sleep coach, and the bottom line is I help families get the sleep they deserve. So I work with a family to help them set age-appropriate, reasonable goals. And the goals come from the parents. It's about the family's goals, not my personal goals for them. But I help them by making sure that the goals are age-appropriate and they're not unreasonable. And I give them education about sleep, and it just helps them understand maybe why things might be happening a certain way in their house. And then I give the parents the motivation and the support to execute once they're ready to start sleep coaching their children. So it's not magic, it's not rocket science, but a lot of families just need a little bit of help getting through. They're tired and they've tried a lot of different things, so I can kind of help narrow it down for them and just help them really dial in and get things under control.
Absolutely. And I know that the families that I'm working with, sleep is a really big topic that comes up for us. So what are some of the goals you hear parents coming to you with?
It is a big deal. And, I was just talking to a client on the phone the other day, and for some reason we both had the same thought at the same time. It was kind of odd. We said there's a reason the military uses sleep deprivation as a form of interrogation. I mean, it can really affect your life and your marriage and your family in many different ways, and often you don't understand how in the thick of it you were until you come out on the other side of that and you're sleeping comfortably again, and then you look back and think, wow, I didn't realize how sleep deprived I was. So often when families come to me, the types of things they say are, I've tried everything. I've read every book and I've taken every piece of advice that my friend or doctor or family member has given me. I feel like I've tried everything and nothing has worked, or we haven't been able to stick with anything long enough to see results. And often the types of goals that parents are looking for, with younger children, with babies, I work with a lot of moms who are trying to wean. They're trying to teach baby to sleep a longer stretch at night. And you don't necessarily have to wean your baby to teach them to sleep a longer stretch, but the two do tend to go hand in hand. So I work with a lot of tired working moms that need to get better sleep at night. And then as the babies grow, I work with parents of older babies and toddlers who are climbing out of their crib or who are crying a lot at bedtime, or, it's super common for kids to call out for mom or dad and not want to go back to sleep unless mom and dad stays in the room with them or lies down with them. And then as children get older, as you know, they get stronger and louder and more physical. So when you're working with a 4 or 5-year-old, it's really important to keep things calm and not get into something physical and, trying to sort of untangle your child off of you in the middle of the night when you're trying to put them back in their bed. So I work with parents of older, preschoolers, 4, 5, 6 years old, about keeping the bedtime routine consistent and calm and helping them teach their children to stay in their beds all night long. and to not get up too early, because early rising is also a really common goal or problem.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I hear about that all the time. And I'm wondering, what do you see is often underlying some of these getting out of bed or avoiding bed dynamics that are happening? What are some nuggets of wisdom that can shed some light on why that is?
Well, a lot of times you have to stop and ask yourself as a parent, what does my child want? Why are they wanting me in the room? Why are they? So, there are some simple strategies like a long, calm bedtime routine, which I know is something that you recommend to a lot of your parents that you work with. But, why would that child want you there in the middle of the night? So there's a few different things. Sometimes kids haven't ever learned to become comfortable with the feeling of lying down, drowsy, but awake, and actually falling asleep. And that's probably the number one reason. They have to get comfortable with that feeling. So if your baby is always rocked to sleep or jiggled or patted to sleep, and if your toddler is always falling asleep with you in the room with them, when any of those children have a partial or a full awakening in the night, which is totally normal, they don't know how to fall back to sleep without that support that they originally had at bedtime.
Wow.
So it's teaching them to really get comfortable with that feeling of laying down in their own independent sleep space and teaching them to feel comfortable falling asleep. And a lot of kids never learn that. And if they can't do it at bedtime, it's certainly not fair to expect them to do it in the middle of the night.
Right. Oh, my gosh.
So we always start sleep coaching at bedtime.
Oh my gosh, I'm having all these light bulbs go off in my head right now because I really specialize in working with families that have a strong-willed child or an intense child, because these kinds of kids tend to have more of a fight or flight stress response in their brain. And I love the brain and helping understand non-traditional strategies for working with this type of temperament. And when you say that about kids haven't learned how to lay there drowsy and feel comfortable with that lying flat on their back or in their bed, it makes me think about the lifestyle that is inherent for these kids who are go, 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 go. Like they're always on the go. It makes sense that if they lay down, they don't know how to slow down.
Yeah, it's really true. And another thing that many parents don't know is sleep begets sleep. So a later bedtime does not necessarily equal a more thorough, deep night's sleep or a later wake up in the morning. And with today's lifestyle, a lot of parents are working later. They are getting their children to bed a little later than they may prefer due to, what's realistic for that family and their schedule. So one thing we talk about a lot, and this will probably tie into the families that you work with in particular, is catching them at that window. Because you missed these kids' natural time where it's natural and easier for them to fall asleep, and their brain releases chemicals to help them stay awake. Just like you said, that fight or flight. So then you have a child who seems totally awake and bouncing off the walls. And what's happening is you've missed their bedtime window, and their brains have released chemicals to help keep them awake. So you have an overtired, hyper child.
Yeah, and I think that's a great myth that you're breaking, that it doesn't matter if you go to bed later. It doesn't mean a child's going to be more tired. And in fact, neurologically, the opposite is happening based on the chemistry. Is there a standard window for kids, or does that really vary?
There is a standard window based on age range, but it's different for every child. So, as far as what time bedtime should be, it's very individual to each family. I can give them an average, but it varies a bit. But, the average 2- and 3-year-olds should be sleeping about 10 and a half hours at night. And most of them still take about an hour and a half nap during the day. And then the average 4-year-old sleeps about 11 and a half hours at night and normally does not nap in the day, although would probably benefit from some quiet time, certainly. And then most of the 5-year-olds are sleeping about 11 hours at night. And again, not napping, but would definitely would benefit from that quiet time in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's really helpful to hear about. And, we talked a little bit about the perspective of the child and how they can help, what some of the things that they need. Now, I read an article recently that was so interesting that was talking about how parents show up during a moment of infraction. And this is something I talk about a lot, being a behavior specialist, and how do you respond to kids' explosive behaviors. And the article is talking about sleep and how that's a time when parents show up with a lot of anxiety because they want their kid to fall asleep because they need to go to sleep. And there's this pattern of child not falling asleep and self-soothing. And so not only are they sleep deprived, but they're really anxious because the pattern perpetuates itself. Can you speak to that and how parents show up?
Absolutely. And I can understand. I've experienced that with my own children. And that's one of the reasons I became a gentle sleep coach in the beginning, was because I struggled with my own kids when they were very young. But you're absolutely right. Parents know that bedtime is going to be a battle, especially with a toddler, and they start to dread it, and they start to become anxious. And then, like you said, that kind of manifests itself. So I would say that if parents know there's a challenge at bedtime, sit down with your spouse or your significant other and set your goals up together. Make sure you're both on the same page as far as what you would like to see for your family. And then choose a plan together, whether you use a sleep coach or a book or you just come up with it on your own and stick with it. Because a parent being consistent is the biggest challenge of all sleep coaching. I can tell you that children will respond to anything as long as the parents are consistent. Any sleep coaching method will work, including cry it out for babies, if the parents can be consistent. There are certain methods of sleep coaching that will help reduce tears. There are certain types of temperaments that tend to respond better or worse to different styles of coaching, and that's one of the things I educate parents about. But in general, if the parents can come up with something that they can be consistent at and they can stick with, and that's realistic for their family, that will ensure their success. Because if they can't be consistent, those kids will latch onto that in a second, and they'll find that moment of weakness, and pretty soon things are unraveling again.
Oh, I totally get that. And, sometimes we label kids as being manipulative when that happens, but I like how you just said they latch onto it. Because really what's going on in the brain is kids have this little scientist in their brain that's always doing this aggressive research to see where's the boundary, where's the limit, what can I get away with?
Absolutely.
And so
it's funny. I agree with you.
Yes?
Yeah, the word manipulative, it comes up a lot when you're sleep coaching. And I said I hate to use it because it kind of has a negative connotation. But kids just want their parents to come. And especially babies and young children, like 18 months, they'll just do whatever it takes until mom or dad come. So, parents really need to respond. And I do believe firmly, and most gentle sleep coaches would say this, I'm sure of it, in responding to the child. We always respond to the child. I don't believe in leaving a child to cry out for mom or dad and just leaving them. But we always respond to the child, but in a consistent manner and very minimal interaction in the middle of the night and, very non-emotional. And, I don't care if it takes 50 times. You don't get angry. You don't get frustrated. You just take them back to their bed and help them get in and say it's still the middle of the night. You just really got to do it at a time when you can stick with it.
Yes, I love that. I love following your blogs because you talk about the realistic points of sleep coaching, which is make sure that you're carving out time in your schedule so that you can stick with it. I love your approach of responding to the kids. And I know that you've worked with some close friends of mine and some clients of mine, and they've been so pleased because they've learned how to specifically go into the bedroom. Where do they sit? What kind of a voice do they use? What do they say? What do they not say? And when do they leave? And it's just so helpful because it's so specific.
And you're right. And I often say that to parents. The success is in these little tiny details, almost always. So it's a very, very detail-oriented process. And that's where the benefit comes in of working with a sleep coach, really, is I can get into the nitty-gritty and say, tell me exactly what that looks like when you go in there at 2 a.m. I want to be able to picture it in my mind. And then I can say, oh, you know what? I think you might be staying too long by the curve of the bed, and I think you're actually stimulating the child. So let me play it out for you. This is what I'm picturing. This might work better. That kind of thing.
Right. I love that. And so you've talked about different styles of sleep coaching. So how would I know if somebody would benefit from the gentle sleep coaching style?
Well, the reason that I think this program is gentle is because I make sure the goals are really age appropriate. We work with the family's goals, not goals that I set for them. And we always start with the most gentle method first. There are some parents that come to me and they just want permission to let their kids cry it out, their babies. They want to know that that's okay. And I give them the pros and the cons. And I say, let's start with this gentle method first. And if we find that that doesn't work with the temperament of your child, then we can move on to something that's a little bit more structured. But I would say any family where sleep is a problem or a challenge in their house would probably benefit from some sleep coaching. And I like to think that families really fall into one of three categories. The first category is parents who never really had to think about it. Their children just sort of slept well and they didn't really have to put a lot into it. And the second category is parents who took the advice from friends or families, or they took what they read in a book and they were able to execute it and it worked for them. And the third category is probably the families that you work with, Samantha, and also that I work with. And they're the families that either want something more gentle than what they've read about in a book or what their doctor has recommended, or they feel like they've tried everything and nothing has worked. Yeah. I get the people who say, I feel like I've tried everything and I'm not able to stick with anything because I don't have enough confidence in it. Or we tried Cry It Out and that didn't work for us. And I'll tell you that children with a challenging temperament don't respond to Cry It Out or don't respond to being left alone. They tend to cry louder and longer and resist more. So, the children that you are dealing with and the children that I am dealing with are often children of a more challenging temperament that need sort of a different tack.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said that so beautifully. And I think that this next question is going to be really obvious to anybody who's watching us right now. And that is, why is sleep coaching or why is good sleep important?
Well, it's important for the parent and the child. Children, on the most basic level, need sleep to grow and to develop and to be happy. Well-rested kids are happier and they have more fun and they want to explore and get along with other kids better. And with older kids, with 3, 4, 5-year-olds, you can talk about that. When you're, working this out at bedtime, that can kind of be one of the things. Well, listen, tomorrow, we want to go to the park and I want you to have fun and feel good and I don't want you to wake up grumpy. So let's work together here, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So for kids, they need it physically and emotionally. And for adults, that's true as well. Everything from the husband-wife relationship and the lack of intimacy that comes from sleeping with, one of them on the floor of the kids' rooms, to just your level of patience and your ability to follow through and being a parent is challenging. And it's very challenging to make difficult decisions when you are sleep deprived. So also for a parent, it's very physical. You have moms that are breastfeeding, that are recovering from childbirth, that are working full time. Their bodies are working hard and their minds are working hard. So they also need sleep on all levels.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Betsy, your information has been so valuable. I know when we met, it was probably 2013, maybe early 2014. I knew that I wanted to snap you up and keep you in my back pocket because I know the work you do with families is so, so important. So thank you so much for your time today. And what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
The best way is my website. It's betsybarney.com. www.betsy, B-E-T-S-Y, and Barney, like the purple dinosaur, BARNEY.com. And it has my 800 number and information about my family and what I do and how I do it. So if anyone needs more information, please feel free to visit my website.
That's fantastic. And just briefly, I know that this answer might really vary, but when somebody reaches out to work with you, is there a timeline as to how long that lasts?
Yeah, usually the most challenging part of coaching, which is that bedtime and those middle of the night wakings, that usually is about a 12-night program. And we usually see a lot of progress. Usually we see a lot of progress within the first 3 or 4 nights. If we don't, I tend to go back and say to the parents, am I missing something? Do we need to do this a different way? But it's usually about a 12-night program.
Well, nice. I didn't know that. A totally different world when child is well rested and parent is well rested. 12 nights, it sounds worth it to me, Betsy.
Yeah, no matter how hard it gets, you can do anything for 12 nights when you see that light at the end of the tunnel. It really is life changing.
Yeah, especially if you've already been sleep deprived for 12 years, then 12 nights isn't so bad. Well, thank you again so much for your time. For those of you who want to reach out, BetsyBarney.com. That's Betsy, Betsy, Barney, Barney.com. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, Betsy.
Thank you, Samantha. Bye-bye.
Bye.